Alright, Kendrick Evans 31 here, and I'm going to give you a couple tips on what to look for when buying a used car from a private vendor. Meaning you're not buying from a dealership, you're buying from the actual owner of the vehicle. First off, what are some things people will do to keep you convinced? First off, if the seller is constantly talking and observing your observation, that is a clue that they're probably trying to make sure you don't see anything. Just keep an eye on that. If the seller keeps on saying the car is in good condition, tell the seller that you want to have a look with the car privately, one-on-one. This is a common thing sellers would do to keep you convinced. If the seller keeps noting one good thing about the vehicle, that is most likely the only good thing about the vehicle. So just watch out for these things. These are some of the things that sellers will do to keep you convinced. What to look out for mechanically? Check the gauge cluster for any fingerprints behind the clear cover. There should not be any fingerprints behind the clear cover. If there are, that is a clue that the odometer has been altered. So just if you see any fingerprints, ask why are those fingerprints there. Take a look under the hood. Look at the engine. Remove the oil cap to make sure there's no blow-by. Meaning, you leave the engine running, you remove the oil cap, and if there is oil spurting out, walk away from the vehicle. Because don't even buy it, because the engine is, the engine should not have blow-by. Check the tires. The most common way to check tires is with a penny or coin of some type. You'll get a general idea of how much tread the tire has left. Check the drivetrain. The drivetrain consists of the transmission, if the car is rear-wheel drive, a drive shaft, and a rear end, or differential, or final drive. Check the body lines. Make sure the front door doesn't stick out farther than the back door. Make sure the rear quarter panel doesn't stick out farther than, let's say, the front door. And does the vehicle have a tow hitch? If it has a tow hitch, it's a clue that the vehicle has done some towing in its life. Take for a test drive. Make sure the engine isn't sluggish or slow to respond. That can tell you it has a fuel delivery problem, or a fuel injection problem, or it could just be doing it when the engine is cold. Most engines are sluggish when it's cold. Make sure it's warmed up to get an accurate understanding of the engine. Punch the gas a little. Make sure the tranny is shifting out. The transmission is shifting out like it is supposed to. If the vehicle is four-wheel drive, ask permission to engage it. If the vehicle is four-wheel drive, ask permission to engage it. You'll know what to look for. Make sure it engages, most of all. If you hear a clunk noise, that is normal. If it's electric shift, a lever system, those are bulletproof, so you really don't have to check for that. Check the brakes. Older brakes will be soft. That is normal, but most brakes do not supposed to be really, really soft, like almost to the floor. If they are too soft for your comfort, ask if there's anything wrong with the brakes. That could be a problem. Make sure the engine idles correctly. What I mean by that is make sure the engine doesn't spit and sputter and vibrate while it's running. That can be a timing issue or a air-to-gas mixture issue. Go through the whole transmission gearbox. Go from park to low, or park to reverse, to neutral to drive 3 to drive 2 to drive 1. Make sure the engine doesn't cut off while you're doing this. Yeah. What are some questions to ask? How many times has the vehicle been serviced? You can get a general idea of how many times the vehicle should be serviced based off the vehicle's year. If it is a 2002, if they say it has been serviced 20 times, that's a pretty accurate, pretty understandable amount of service times. Has it ever been into the shop? If the private vendor says yes, ask what for. What's the problem solved, and am I going to have any more problems out of it? Has it ever had a rebuilt or new engine? Most people see this as a bad thing, but it is actually a good thing. If the engine is new, that is good. If the engine is rebuilt, that is good. And just because the engine is rebuilt doesn't mean there was something wrong with it in the first place. The primary reason of rebuilding the engine is to make it better, not because something was wrong with it. Not saying that you don't rebuild an engine when something is wrong with it, but, has the vehicle ever been in a wreck? Get a history report on it. Has it ever been in a wreck? And things like that. Is the SRS airbag system still working? Has the vehicle ever done any towing? If it has, most likely you will have transmission failure or normal transmission wear. So yeah. Finally, is it worth it? The seller may or may not add KBB value. Note that KBB value is a vehicle in excellent condition, meaning nothing is wrong with it. Absolutely, you have low miles, leather, or whatever kind of seats it has is in good condition. Paint is still glossy, no stains, no ripples, no cuts in the floor. The headliner is still good, blah 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 blah. Check for things like that. Has your observation been a good one? Outweigh the negative and positive things. You're gonna have some negative things in a used vehicle. Things like maybe tires or paint scratches or something like that. It is always going to be something with a used vehicle, especially a high mileage one. If it has, and if it has been a good observation, and you think it is worth it, start negotiating. Start negotiating. You'll know if you're making the right decision or not. Make an offer. Tell the seller you have cash, but don't tell them how much. Do not tell them how much. Most desperate sellers, they like to have cash. They especially if they make the deal, they sign over the title, they have the cash right in their hands. They love that. If the seller refuses to go down, remind them of all the negative things about the vehicle. This will most likely make the seller make you break ice with the seller, and they most likely will start negotiating. But anytime you are dealing with a private vendor, they are most likely going to negotiate. I never, what is a good word? I rarely have a problem negotiating. I buy used vehicles all the time. I rarely have problems negotiating, especially when it's a private vendor. They love to negotiate. They understand that you're the one spending, investing that money into the vehicle. They should understand. And that's the end of my slideshow. Just a couple little mechanical tips. Check the transmission fluid. Make sure the transmission fluid does not smell burnt. Transmission fluid can be red. Not all transmission fluid is red. Check the fluids. Make sure that check the fluids. Make sure that that'll give you a general idea of how well the owner takes care of their vehicle. Check the engine oil. Make sure it is not low, and make sure it is not too black. Just because it is low doesn't mean the seller or owner neglects the vehicle. Some engine oil, like heavyweight oil, is low upon cold temperature, meaning it expands when it gets hot. So if you're going to check it, make sure the engine is warm, because if you check it while the engine is cold, you're going to get an inaccurate reading, especially if it's heavyweight oil. Most V8s have require 5 quarts of oil. Most V6s require 4 to 4.5, and most 4-cylinders require 3.5 to 4 quarts of oil. So just make sure, things like that. Make sure if the car is rear-wheel drive, make sure the differential, look around the differential case. Make sure you don't see any grease buildup. If it does, that can mean it was recently drained because it had water in it or something like that. Just make sure of these things and be very cautionary. Kendrick Evans 301. Hope my vehicle was helpful, and please subscribe. Kendrick Evans 301.